everyone.
Morning.
How are we doing?
Good.
Good. All right, so I'm going to talk about our residents and their needs and their rights. And then I'm going to filter in a little bit about how our residents are doing right now in light of COVID. So first we're going to start off with the needs of our residents while they're here with us. So as you know, our residents are going through the aging process. This can be quite frightening for some residents. Others adapt well and, like to play bingo or like to play cards, and others are more like self-isolating. So the way that we can work with residents makes them feel better about themselves and can also make our days and our work more pleasant. So we do see a lot of common changes when it comes to our residents prior to admission. Changes within their family environment. All of our residents at this point are retired. They may be widows. Their income has changed, and certainly their social world has changed. So we are going to go through each of these individually. When we're talking about family changes, there's a lot of satisfaction with visiting with our families. And often the role with our residents has changed multiple times. So when they're younger, they're taking care of their children, they're enjoying their grandchildren. But as they age, we see that the children are now taking care of them and making decisions for them. So there's a lot of changes that the residents have to get used to, and often, sometimes it's a little rocky because they don't think that their children should be making choices for them, or they're perfectly fine. It just really goes either way. So also our residents are retired. This can be difficult for some because you're used to working 40 plus hours a week, and now you have all this free time on your hands. So really at this point we might see that they develop some hobbies, or even maybe before they come here they might have done like a part-time job, or we have some residents that work until 5 years before coming into a nursing home. We've had that before too. So a lot has to do with the emphasis of them feeling like they're being productive. We also have residents that are widows. This does affect more women than men, as women tend to live longer. Adjusting with the loss of someone that they've shared a life with is very difficult. Again, we've had residents here that their spouses have passed away while they're here. We even had a resident whose spouse passed away during the pandemic, and she wasn't able to go to the funeral services or have that type of closure. So, it's very difficult, especially now with the pandemic. And they often, when they become a widow, find themselves in new roles. So if the wife used to handle the finances and now she has passed, and the husband is worried about how does this bill get paid or where does this go to. So it's a lot of change. Also, a lot changes with their income. So when you are retired, income is typically less than what you earned when you were fully employed. So if you can all think about taking your paycheck and cutting it in half and then figuring out how you're going to live off that. So there is some stress that comes along with retirement and the changes in your income. Also, your social world changes. Loneliness sometimes sets in. Grandchildren and children may live at a distance, and now the resident is here and unable to drive to go visit them, so they're waiting for their loved ones to come here. And especially right now, you're seeing your loved ones at a 6-foot distance, and it's been 5 months, and this is all the interaction that you can have. So definitely a lot of changes right now with the social world. I think we're doing more FaceTime and Skype visits and phone calls than we ever have. And it helps, but it's still not the same as sitting in your room or going out to lunch with your loved one. We also see a lot of physical changes as we age. Some of these changes include vision, hearing, taste, and smell. So when it comes to vision, sometimes the main thing is when you're waking up in the morning and you're a little off balance and your vision hasn't quite set in yet. So a lot of that is about knowing your resident. I know Grace Smedley sometimes will stand up first thing in the morning and try to move and walk, and unstable, right? So it has to do with knowing our residents and knowing what their limitations are so that we can best care for them and keep them safe. So what are some ways that we can help a resident who has a visual defect.
Make sure the glasses are clean.
Yeah, make sure that they're wearing their glasses, that they're clean, that they don't have little specks of dirt on them. What else can we do?
That they wear their glasses.
Yeah, that they're wearing them, right? And that they're the right glasses. Sometimes we find people with their roommate's glasses on, right? That doesn't help. What else can we do?
Lights.
Yeah. Make sure the lights are on. Sometimes these LED lights aren't the best, but you know, if you open up the curtains and let some natural light in, that can help too. Good. So we'll go back to hearing. Often hearing is also progressive with age. Usually high frequency sounds are the first to be lost, so we want to make sure that we're talking at an even tone, slowly and clearly, so that the residents can hear us. What are other things that we can do as far as helping our residents that have hearing loss?
Be sure they have their hearing aids in.
Yeah, and what else? With the hearing aids.
Batteries.
Batteries. Hearing aids are no good if they're not having the right batteries or the batteries are dead, right? What else can we do?
Keep remotes nearby.
Yep. Very good. And then also, you know, when we are going in to talk to residents, turning down their TV, eliminating that background noise. Right now it's hard with the masks, but before, you know, they'd be able to read our lips. So right now we're in more of a challenge, I think, with residents that have hearing loss because they can't read our lips, and that's often how they were able to understand what we were saying. So now especially to take some more time with those residents and really get across the information that they need to have. And lastly, we have change with our taste and smell. So taste and smell are diminished due to a decreased number of taste buds and a decrease in the numbers of cells for smell. So it's very important to encourage residents to eat for a lot of different reasons, but also to eat the things that they like, because if we find something that they like, they're going to eat it more, and they're going to have better meal percentages and everything else. So even if that's, you know, a whole plate of mashed potatoes, right, that's still better than nothing. Or if they want 3 desserts, you know, we're going to let them have what they want to be able to keep that weight up so that there's no pressure or, you know, ulcer issues or anything like that. Good. So again, there's a lot of changes when they come to a nursing home as far as the culture. So unfortunately, we are tasked with making sure that things are done in a certain time frame. So breakfast is at 8:30, lunch is at 12, dinner is at 6. You know, making sure that they're eating at the right times, which can be different because that's maybe not all the times that we eat, right? You know, I might have breakfast at 9:30 and lunch at 1 o'clock. So, you know, getting them onto our schedule, but also doing it with ease and making sure that they, you know, are comfortable with it. I know we do have residents that might wake up at 10 o'clock and we just give them a pastry and some coffee. So just knowing our residents and knowing what they like, not forcing anyone to wake up earlier than they might have at home, because this is their home and we should treat them and their schedules appropriately. So they also, you know, have to ring a call bell when they have to use the restroom, or have certain days where they take baths and showers. I don't know about you, but I shower and bathe more than once a week. So that is difficult when residents come here. You know, we know on a professional level, you know, older adults don't sweat as much, they don't have as much body oils, so the need for, you know, in-depth showers more than once a week isn't there. But making sure that we are washing them up with their birdie baths in the morning and in the evening, and making sure that they feel clean so that they, you know, are dignified and feel like, you know, they would if they were at home. So a lot of it too has to do with what their culture was before they came here. So I know the activities department does meet with residents and kind of gets a framework for what their routines were prior to them coming. It's important for us to take a look at that just so that we can kind of, you know, help with that adjustment and know what the residents used to like to do. So how can we bring joy to a resident's life? We can do this by learning about the residents' families, what they used to do for work or what their hobbies were, and different life experiences that they had. And when they're telling us these stories, you know, maybe the resident has some short-term memory and we've heard this story 15 times this week. it's still important for us to act like we are interested and listen to them with sincerity, so that they feel heard. We also want to help build along with those life interests and offer new activities and experiences that they may find pleasurable. So, if we knew that someone liked to water flowers, or they were really into gardening, even if that's not necessarily something we can do, in January, we might want to get them some magazines that have to do with gardening so that they can still find pleasure in the things that they like to do. We have residents that maybe fished all the time, and even though we might not be able to do that because of their needs, there's other things that we can do. Put on the fishing channel on TV, or, being creative in how we're going to help these residents perform the hobbies that they used to. Often, just like anyone else, our residents might have some regrets and dissatisfactions about their life, and they may voice those to us, and we want to be encouraging and listen to them, and then also help them reminisce and encourage their families to reminisce with them. At one point, I know we were getting some photo books together of our residents as a tool for staff to use when they went in. You would look through the photo book and the residents would tell you some stories. That's really important. Not only does that help the residents' memory and long-term memory, but it also helps us to get to know them. And always use humor to lighten the moment. The one nice thing about Shook is when you do walk down the halls, you often do hear laughter between the residents and the staff, and that's so important for all of us. We want to include residents in our conversations. We don't want to sit and talk about them as if they're not there. I think a big opportunity for this is like in the dining room. We don't, as staff, want to be talking across the room to each other about, what 202 did yesterday, or, intimate details about people's lives. That's all very intimate, and we want to make sure that we're not, spreading it around to everyone sitting in the dining room. So we want to be cautious and conscious of that. And we also want to speak to residents the same way that we would speak to any adult, even if they have behaviors that are sometimes childish, or they have dementia and they think that, they're the child and you're their mom or dad, right? We still want to talk to them with respect because they have earned that and they should be respected. We also want to be aware of our facial expressions. I know it's hard to kind of smile as you always would behind a mask. But like Sandy pointed out the other day, people know when you're smiling behind your mask. So there's other gestures that we can do too to show joy, maybe instead of just smiling, maybe we'll smile and wave, or, pat someone on the back, or, do something that's appropriate, but to know that they know that you're here and you're happy to be here and you care about them. We also want to make sure to give our residents time to respond. I think sometimes we're in the hustle and bustle of things, and if we're going around with the snack cart and we know that you always choose cheese curls, right? We're still going to give you the opportunity to voice what you want. And even if it takes an extra minute or two to stand there and let the residents decide, that's important. Decisions, any decisions that the residents can make are important. Does anyone have any questions about the psychosocial needs of our residents? Okay. We're going to talk about dementia. It's something we deal with every single day. So dementia is damage to brain cells, and this is the inability of cells to communicate with each other. So this can happen in different parts of the brain, such as memory, movement, and judgment. So some symptoms of dementia, which we again see every day, are memory loss, responding inappropriately to questions, not being able to follow complex conversations, becoming agitated, impaired judgment, difficulty problem solving, speech impairment, such as a lot of repetition or sounds, incontinence, and sleep cycle disturbances. So I know when I read down the list, I can think of, one or two residents that fit all these descriptions, right? So we also want to rule out delirium when we're talking about residents. So if Harry Souders, who's pretty much clear and able to hold conversations with you, one day all of a sudden isn't making sense, is having problems word finding, is just being off. We're not automatically going to say, oh, well, within one day, Harry's dementia got worse, right? We're going to think it might be some delirium. So what are different things, and I know I have a list here, but think outside the box. What are some things that we could link to the delirium? Some changes that all of a sudden is making someone more confused.
Someone out of the family.
Yeah. Maybe they just had something traumatic happen to a family member and they're having a hard time digesting that information and they're just off. What else?
A urinary tract infection?
Yeah, UTI, some kind of infection, pneumonia, anything at this point, right? Something that's really messing with their cognition. What other things?
Maybe a new medication?
New medication, yeah, or even an increase or a decrease in certain medications, a brand new medication. Yeah, they can all cause different confusions. Again, infection, we touched on that. Low oxygen, low blood sugar or high blood sugar, dehydration, right? So and that comes with us knowing our residents. So if all of a sudden we see that Harry is confused, we're gonna work as a team to kind of figure out what's going on so we can treat it as fast as possible. And the way we communicate with residents who have dementia is very important. We just have to be creative, and that's all it comes down to. So with written cues and reminders, Mrs. Smith, remember to use your walker. There's all types of signs in residence rooms. Ring call bell before getting up. Those are all things to trigger someone with dementia to be safe. Simple steps in maintaining routines. So if you're getting someone up to use the bathroom, don't say, we're going to get up, we're going to walk, we're going to go to the bathroom, we're going to wipe, leave that all out. At this step, we're going to stand up. Next step, we're going to walk to the bathroom. So little steps so they know what's going on. Not always orienting to reality, right? That's not always productive. So if it's January and a resident thinks that it's July, so be it, right? If they're really curious and you want to correct them, that's fine. But, often they're not going to remember a couple of minutes later and really what does it hurt, right? Avoid asking a lot of why questions. Sometimes we might just be interested, but in other points we might just be agitating someone that doesn't need to be agitated. Having patience, using distraction techniques. We had a resident that for whatever reason didn't want to go out and visit her family on the sun porch when we knew that she would benefit from it, right? So, it was Betty Boyer. She didn't want to go out to see her family. So we're going to say, hey, Betty, we have some chocolate waiting for you on the sun porch. Let's go get it. Things that we know are going to benefit a resident and things that we can use to distract them to, visit with the family. And of course, afterwards, she was so happy she did it. So those types of things. Speaking slowly, calmly, and with a soft tone, approaching someone from the front and establishing eye contact. I think that's probably something I see the most often. Imagine someone running up behind you right now and starting to push your chair without telling you where we're going or telling you that I'm going to move you, especially if someone's sleeping. That is just like, no one wants to be woken up like that. So just think about those things. Again, we have things to do. We are on a time limit. But you got to think about if you were in that wheelchair, would you want someone running up behind you and starting to push you? Reducing environmental distractions. So like we said, turning down the television if we're going to go in and talk to someone. And ask forced questions rather than yes or no. Engage in conversation, but also don't make it too complicated. So unfortunately, we do see a lot of aggression when it comes to dementia as well. Sometimes I think we're easy to want to blame it on the resident. So we're going to say, oh, she's just attention seeking. She just wants our attention today. Or, she's just trying to manipulate you, or they know better. I always like to say, if a resident could kind of come out of their confusion and see the way that they were acting, they wouldn't want to be acting that way. So I guarantee you they're not doing it on the purposeful level. So trying to determine what triggers a resident and remove those triggers, and working as a team to determine what works best for each resident. And each day might be different. So yesterday the chocolate worked on Betty, tomorrow it may not. So each day we're going to come up with different tools that we can use to help our residents. Any questions when it comes to dementia? And I guess we should add in there too, if a resident with dementia is watching Criminal Minds, is that the best thing to be watching, right? The next day they're saying, oh my God, someone came into my room with a knife and they were trying to murder my roommate. Like those types of things we can just totally take out of the situation. So making sure even what's on the television is appropriate for our residents. That happened last week, that's not a joke. Okay, so different types of mental illness. We do work with residents that have mental illness and intellectual disabilities, whether it's more on set, like dementia, or whether it's something they've been living with for long term, so like major depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. Those are all types of people that we come in contact with every day. So the best way of helping someone with an intellectual disability is knowing what that is. So an intellectual disability, or someone who has this, has a lower intellectual functioning, meaning that their IQ is significantly below average, and they may have trouble with daily living skills, and including communication, right? So they're having trouble talking to us, they can't manage their care, or different work skills or hobby skills. So intellectual disabilities can be caused by any condition that impairs development of the brain. Some common causes are, genetic conditions, problems during birth, alcohol and drug use by the mother, and some childhood illnesses and exposure to toxic materials. So the abilities with someone with an intellectual disability may vary. Some people are able to learn new skills and able to function on a daily basis. Others have a harder time with those things. So when we're also talking about intellectual disabilities, a lot comes into play with mental illness as well. So mental illness is a disturbance in behavior, mood, and thought process, and then it also affects our social skills and our interpersonal relationships. So there's many different types of mental illnesses and different levels of severity. Someone with a mental illness may be here with us because the loved one that used to care for them passed away, right? And now they're here because they need help with care. So it's important to know about these issues with each individual, not because we treat them any differently, but because we know some of their triggers maybe, and we know what helps them to get through the day and be successful. So a resident with a mental illness may also feel deep sadness, may hear voices, may be suspicious of others, change moods quickly, and have emotional highs and lows. Again, I think we see that every day. So a lot of times, residents that have mental illnesses are treated with medications. So every Friday we do what's called a psychoactive med review, and we review these medications and if the residents are having any behaviors or side effects from these meds. So again, those are all details that we get from our CNAs that tell our LPNs, and the LPNs document it for us. So it's important that we see, Mr. Smith is having a change and he's being really aggressive and really agitated. We're going to look at, did we change his medication recently? Does he need any increase, or is this med not working? So all those tiny details, whether they're normal for that resident or not, are very good to pass along because they help us to determine what we can do to best help them with medication management. And again, we are going to see some behaviors when it comes to intellectual disabilities or mental health issues. So being able to use different techniques in order to increase or decrease certain behaviors. Again, one thing might work one day and it might not work the next. So on a lower scale, just as an example, if we have someone that all of a sudden, is not eating well, and they used to have like 90 to 100% meal percentage every day that they were eating so well, and now it's like 20%. What are different things that we're going to think about as a team as to why someone's appetite went down?
They were upset over something.
They were upset over something. Lorraine Rife, with all of her dementia, she still remembers the exact week that her husband passed away, right?
Yeah.
So as staff, we know Lorraine, and we should know that anniversary week so that we can help prevent some of these things that she's going to be going through, or keeping an extra eye on her that week, right? What are some other things that can decrease our appetite? You can even think of yourselves personally.
Medications.
Yeah, something new started with a medication, and maybe it's upsetting their stomach. What else?
Cold.
A cold, COVID right now, right? So, we may be looking at different cold symptoms, flu symptoms. We're going into flu season now. So any combination of illness in any way is going to maybe decrease our appetite. What else? Maybe the decrease has been happening for 2 weeks now, and someone lost 10 pounds and their dentures aren't fitting right anymore, and it makes it uncomfortable for them to eat. Right? So we want to think about all these different things. We don't want to just, jot down, 20% today, and not even think about the next step. You know, if someone does decrease, we want to think, why is that? Maybe it's just an off day, that's perfectly fine. But, you know, we want to understand what's going on with our residents. Good. So, as always, just like anyone, our residents have rights. The Nursing Home Reform Law of 1987 increased their emphasis on our resident rights, and they created a minimum set of standards of care for people living in nursing homes. So some of the things, these are our resident rights. We'll go through them here, but I'll give you a minute to jot them down because I think it's one of your questions. If anyone needs to go back to this slide later, we can. But our residents have the right for freedom of choice, so to make personal decisions, to refuse medications. You know, we can provide them with education and the negative outcomes that might come along with refusing a medication. But at the end of the day, if they refuse, we can't force them to take it. Accommodation and needs of preferences. We had someone move from a private room to a semi-private room the other day and they did not like it. So it's their right to move back to a private room if we have something available, right? They have the right to choose a physician and to participate in community activities such as resident council. They have the right to dignity and respect, so to be treated with consideration, respect, and dignity, to be free from mental and physical abuse, corporal punishment, involuntary seclusion, and physical and chemical restraints. So right now, you know, our residents are able to eat with their roommates in the dining room, but for someone that might not have a roommate or someone whose roommate doesn't join them for lunch, you know, even though we have to set 6 feet of a difference and all those, we want to make sure that they're at least kind of facing each other, right? So that someone's not sitting facing the corner of the wall when they have to eat, right? So different things like that. The main point of bringing them out is to get them socialized. So make sure that they're able to see each other and engage in some conversation. And then also they have the right to secure personal possessions. So each resident in their room, their nightstand, the top drawer is locked. They have the right to keep whatever in there that they wish. They have the right to be fully informed, so to know the availability of services and charges, to know the facility rules and regulations, to know their residents' rights, and to contact an ombudsman or survey agency if they so choose. We can't say, oh my gosh, Mr. Brown is going to call the ombudsman, we got to take their phone, right? No, we let them call, we even give them the phone number if they wish. So they do have rights as well during transfers and discharges. So they have the right to remain in the facility unless the transfer or discharge meets certain criteria. So if someone is being really abusive towards other staff or residents and they meet the criteria to be transferred to another facility, we have to give them 30 days notice. We have to include the reason why we are transferring them, the date that we're going to be transferring them, where they're going to be transferred to, and we have to educate them on their appeal rights in case they would like to appeal our decision. They also have the right to complain, just like any of us, right? They have the right to present a grievance to staff and with prompt efforts for the facility to resolve those grievances. So if you hear something, pass it along so that we can help to resolve those issues before it becomes something catastrophic. Again, to contact an ombudsman, to file a complaint with the state survey agency, and to recommend different changes in facility policies and rules. So a lot of that comes from resident council. You know, if they have an issue with one of our new policies, last year our policy changed that we are a non-alcohol facility. So if they had any questions or issues with those changes, we could do our best to educate them. If it was really something that they weren't going to be able to understand or get over, you know, we could also point them in the direction of another nursing home that would have an alcohol policy that you could have a drink or something. So we want to do everything we can to make sure that residents have a choice in different rules and options of other facilities if they aren't happy. They also have the right to participate in their own care, so to receive adequate and appropriate care, to be informed of changes in their medical condition, to participate in assessment, care planning, treatment, and discharges, and to form advanced directives. So a lot of times, you know, there's a change in the medical condition.
2, 3, 2.
Sandy, thank you. So if there's a change in a medical condition and we're like so focused on calling that first emergency contact and telling the daughter, hey, your mom has a UTI, right? You would not imagine how many residents I go in and say, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that you have an infection. What infection? Well, yeah, so we have to make sure that we're informing the correct person, but also informing the resident, right? And they have right to visits, especially furry visits right now, to meet with the physicians, ombudsmen, again, or state survey agents, and to visit with friends and relatives. Right now, that's a challenge, but you know that they know about our visitation policies and when there's any changes to that. So we are doing a great job at calling family members and telling them that they can come in and visit, but also to let the residents know so they don't think that their family just abandoned them for 6 months. And then also to participate in social or religious gatherings. Hopefully we're going to be starting all them up with our chaplain here and get people back to having some of those religious gatherings. Also, they have the right to privacy and confidentiality, so unrestricted communication with persons of choice, to receive their mail that hasn't been opened, and privacy during treatment and regarding medical, personal, or financial affairs. So this comes into play, you know, no one walking down the hall wants to look in a room and see someone, you know, that's undressed and getting care to them. We want to make sure that we're being private, we're closing that privacy curtain so that the roommate's not observing the care, and then we're closing the door so that, you know, visitors or anyone walking down the hall isn't seeing intimate moments. Also, I know it's hard, and I find myself neglecting to do it sometimes, but making sure that we're knocking on the doors before entering. We wouldn't want someone flying through our door at home without knocking, right? And then lastly, we want to support our residents' rights and their dignity. So we want to ask them about their wishes, encourage choice, and listen to what our residents tell us. We want to resist the temptation to make decisions solely on what's best for the residents. So I always go down to, you know, if we formed really nice relationships with our residents, and sometimes we care about them so much that we want to tell them what to do. Well, ultimately, we can express maybe how we feel, but at the end of the day, it's the resident's decision with their care, with their medication, or whatever it is to make their own decision. All right, any questions on any of that? I have a short video that I showed last year, but I just can't find one that beats it, so I'm going to show it again.
Hard for me to tell you.
Watch this story continue on Tecentric.com.
We put a lot of stress on our feet. It's no wonder they ache. Introducing ArchFit from Skechers. ArchFit distributes pressure.